Ever wondered why Zeus is sometimes called Jupiter, or why Aphrodite is also known as Venus? It's not just a name change. It's a tale of two ancient civilizations, the Greeks and the Romans, and how their stories of gods and heroes intertwined. Let's dive into the fascinating world of Greek and Roman mythology. At first glance, Roman mythology looks like a carbon copy of the Greek pantheon. You have Jupiter, king of the gods, who mirrors the Greek Zeus. Juno, his wife, is the Roman equivalent of Hera. Neptune, god of the sea, is clearly Poseidon, and Mars, the god of war, is Ares. The list goes on and on. So, did the Romans just plagiarize the Greeks? Well, it's a bit more complicated and a lot more interesting than that. The story begins with the early Romans. They had their own set of deities, spirits known as nous. These weren't gods with human-like personalities and epic backstories like the Greek Olympians. They were more like abstract forces that governed daily life. For instance, Janus was the spirit of doorways and new beginnings, and Vesta was the spirit of the hearth and home. These were practical gods for a practical people, focused on agriculture, family, and the state. Then, around the 8th century BCE, the Greeks started establishing colonies in southern Italy. This cultural exchange was a game changer. The Romans were captivated by the rich, dramatic, and very human stories of the Greek gods. These weren't just abstract forces. They had jealousies, love affairs, and grand adventures. It was primetime television for the ancient world. So, the Romans began a process called syncretism. They didn't just replace their gods, they merged them. They took their existing deities and mapped them onto the Greek gods who had similar domains. Jupiter, who was already a sky god for the Romans, was identified with Zeus. Mars, an ancient agricultural and warrior god for the Romans, was linked with the Greek Ares. This is why the names are different. The Romans kept their original Latin names, but adopted the Greek stories and characteristics. But here's where it gets really fascinating. The Romans didn't just copy and paste. They adapted the gods to fit their own values and culture. Let's take a look at Ares versus Mars. In Greek mythology, Ares was often depicted as a bloodthirsty, chaotic, and somewhat unpopular god. He represented the brutal, savage side of war. The Greeks, who valued philosophy and art, were a bit wary of him. Now, look at the Roman Mars. Mars was one of the most important gods in Rome, second only to Jupiter. He wasn't just a god of war. He was a guardian of the state, a protector of Roman legions, and even a god of agriculture. He was seen as a disciplined, honorable figure, the mythical father of Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome. For the empire-building Romans, a strong, respected god of war was essential. Mars embodied Roman military virtue and civic duty, a far cry from the hot-headed Greek Ares. Let's consider another example, Aphrodite and Venus. The Greek Aphrodite was the goddess of love, beauty, and pleasure, born from sea foam in a dramatic tale. She was passionate, often vain, and involved in countless romantic scandals. The Romans adopted her as Venus, but Roman Venus had an added layer of importance. She was considered the divine ancestor of the Roman people through her son Aeneas, who fled Troy and whose descendants founded Rome. This made Venus a motherly, ancestral figure for the entire nation, not just a goddess of romance. She represented a divine link to Rome's destiny. Even the king of the gods shows this difference. The Greek Zeus was notorious for his temper and his countless affairs, often disguising himself to cheat on his wife Hera. He was powerful, yes, but also deeply flawed and impulsive. The Roman Jupiter while also powerful and sharing many of Zeus's stories, was portrayed with more gravity and dignity. He was the ultimate symbol of Roman law, order, and justice. He was Jupiter, Optimus Maximus, the best and greatest, divine protector of the Roman state. The Romans emphasized his role as a just ruler, reflecting their own emphasis on law and governance. What about the heroes? The Greeks had figures like Achilles and Odysseus. Achilles was the ultimate warrior, driven by personal glory and rage. Odysseus was the cunning trickster, a hero who relied on his wits to survive. These heroes were incredible individuals, but their stories were often about personal quests and grappling with their own flaws and fate. The Roman ideal hero was someone like Aeneas, the protagonist of Virgil's epic, the Aeneid. Aeneas is a Trojan prince who escapes the fallen city of Troy. His journey isn't for personal glory. It's a divine mission to found a new city which would eventually become Rome. His defining characteristic is pietas, a Roman virtue meaning duty to one's family, gods, and country. He constantly sacrifices his personal desires for the greater good of his people. Aeneas is less of a rogue individualist and more of a selfless, state-building hero. He embodies the Roman ideal of putting the community and duty above all else. So, while the names and many of the stories might seem like a simple translation, the shift from Greek to Roman mythology reflects a profound cultural difference. The Greeks, with their love for drama, philosophy, and individualism, created gods and heroes who were passionate, flawed, and intensely human. Their myths explored the complexities of the human condition. The Romans, a practical people focused on empire, law, and civic duty, adapted these myths to serve their society. Their gods became more stoic, more dignified, and more intertwined with the destiny of Rome itself. Their heroes were models of duty and self-sacrifice. In essence, Greek mythology asks, what does it mean to be human? While Roman mythology asks, what does it mean to be Roman? One is a universe of personal drama. The other is a divine blueprint for an empire. Next time you hear about Jupiter's thunderbolt or Venus's beauty, remember the journey those stories took across the Mediterranean. From the lively city-states of Greece to the mighty empire of Rome, these myths were not just copied. They were reborn, reshaped by a new culture with its own unique vision of the world. It's a powerful reminder of how stories evolve and adapt, reflecting the people who tell them. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey through mythology as exciting as I did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history and culture. Let me know in the comments which god or hero you find most fascinating, Greek or Roman. See you next time.